Welcome to Sleepless in st.canard, where nostalgia replaces REM cycles. I'm Kitty.
And I'm Ange.
And we haven't slept
in 30 years.
This is a podcast about the 90s classic cartoon Darkwing Duck, but also about the more recent comic series about the 90s classic cartoon Darkwing Duck. Today we continue our Ange Tells Me a Story series about the comic misadventures of the masked mallard and his sentient blender foes. Last week, Ange was full of hope, was full of confidence that she could recount these literary epics over the course of just 2 meager episodes. But the heft and the majesty of the Duck Knight Returns shredded a whole episode to itself, just like so many Mr. Banana Brains. So today, we are picking up where she left off with the next arc, which is...
Crisis on Infinite Darkwings!
Dun 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 dun!
Dun dun dun! So, a bit of background information. If I recall correctly, it was before this part of the comic series dropped. I had already met everybody at New York Comic Con, and that's when I started learning the background information and like the inside details on the story and what was going on behind the scenes at Boom Studios and all this stuff that was happening between various creative people, mostly Aaron Sparrow and Ian Brill. So when when this first issue of Crisis on Infinite Darkwings dropped, I think it dropped in November or October it literally has the date written right there. Okay. October 2010 is when this was published. So,
sizzling 11 years ago.
Yes, and I remember talking to Aaron at the convention, and I guess this wouldn't surprise you, Kitty, but the very top thing that I asked him, first and foremost, was,
Where's my Negaduck?
Well, technically yes, but because you know that the Duck Knight Returns ended with the cliffhanger with Negaduck and Magica gazing into the crystal ball, and it was like, ooh, right. They're teaming up. So the very first thing I said to Aaron Sparrow was, is there going to be some kind of romantic subtext between Negaduck and Magica Dispel? Yeah, I went there.
Already.
I went there. I asked him because I needed to be emotionally prepared for whether or not this was going to be a thing. And he told me no. He said that there was not any, although I think by this point he was not even writing the comics. Let me just look at the credits here. It says, yeah, the writer is now credited as, well, it always was. It's Ian Brill. Artist is James Silvani. And the editor was officially Chris Burns. So by this point, Aaron Sparrow was not remotely involved. He's not mentioned in the credits, but he told me that like when he had planned it and when it was written out, there was no actual implication. Although you will see that obviously Negaduck is Negaduck, and you know he likes to manipulate people. So let's just dive right into this, because we're just taking right off from where we left off, and there's quite a bit to talk about, and hopefully it won't take an hour and 40 minutes like our last recording.
Would you say there is an infinite number of things to talk about?
I walked into that one.
You sure did.
So I will say the cool thing about this arc is, as the name suggests, there are an infinite number of Darkwings, and basically James Silvani had to draw every kind of Darkwing Duck you can imagine, and there's a lot of pop culture references. I won't go over every single one that appeared because there are quite literally like hundreds of them, but there's a few noteworthy ones that I will mention that I thought were kind of funny.
Give out shout-outs where due.
Indeed. So, let us dive right into issue number 5 of the series. And I remember, okay, the comic book covers for this one were there was two. One of them is Darkwing and Launchpad being cornered, and you can see Dark Warrior Duck on his tank. And they're surrounded by a bunch of other different Darkwing Ducks. There's a sumo wrestler Darkwing. There's a flying monkey Darkwing. Bowling ball Darkwing, which you remembered. I don't think anyone...
Great.
Yeah, nobody can forget bowling ball Darkwing. There looks to be like a Silver Surfer Darkwing, although he's gold. I don't know the comic reference very well, but he's on a surfing board and he's solid gold. So some version of that. Go. There's a werewolf Darkwing in the background and a space Darkwing and a two-headed Darkwing. And then the second cover, which I quite like, obviously, it's the original first cover with Darkwing being dangled over the acid, except Negaduck slicing through it with his chainsaw, and he's saying, "Here's Negsy."
There you go. Made for Ange.
Indeed. So, we return to St. Canard, where Darkwing has captured the Bugmaster. And for some reason... Yeah, she's just like in the background. She's been like tied upside down and she's hanging off a lamppost. And there's this giant crowd of like 100 people all cheering for Darkwing for some reason because now they love him. He's back and they actually are happy about this for some reason. And there's even a giant blimp in the background that has Darkwing Duck back written on it. And did you know, Kitty, I learned recently on Twitter that there's only 25 blimps in existence in the world?
My God, an endangered species. Let's start a petition to save them.
That is my factoid.
The blimps.
That is my factoid for the day. And there's
a good one.
Yeah, and there's like a fan holding up a sign that says they should give you a comic book. Ha ha ha, meta humor. And Darkwing is of course soaking it all in. He's saying, "Hear that, Launchpad? The sweet sound of our adoring public. I live for this." And there's, I guess, there is a reporter who we don't see, but there's a voiceover of them talking over this. But then we get a shot of two fishermen on a boat in the Audubon Bay. They're just hanging out. And the reporter on the radio is, I guess, a man, I think? Yeah, because it says, "This is one reporter who isn't afraid to say he wants to kiss Darkwing Duck right on the mouth." And then it cuts to the two fishermen, and one of them's like, "Odd thing for a radio man to say," because I guess gay people don't exist in the comic. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's more like it is an interesting thing for a reporter to say because why? It's just like what was the Bugmaster doing? She always seemed pretty small potatoes, unless she really upped her game. But anyway, Darkwing deserves a kiss on the mouth, I guess. For doing what he did.
Yeah, and the other fisherman's like, "Yep." And then the other fisherman continues. It's like a full page of these two just sitting in their boat talking, and he's like, what does he say? "You know, Les, whether it's robots, superheroes, or whatever, things don't change for regular schmoes like you and me." And then the other guy is like, "Yep." And then all of a sudden, a mysterious force pulls the other fisherman into the water, and he's just, I don't know, I guess he dies. It's not really made clear. We'll never see or hear from him again. But
the other guy's just sitting there and goes, "Yep."
That's exactly what happens! I guess the gag was pretty clearly set up there.
They did set it up.
You just knocked it right down. And
yeah.
We go straight into Negaduck and Magica Dispel. So we cut to them, and there's this giant train with an angry Negaduck. Like, it's got like the classic like fanged teeth on it, because of course it does. Anything that Negaduck owns or drives must look angry and dangerous. And it's
like a Negaduck Thomas the Tank Engine?
Yeah. Essentially.
Okay.
And it's
Cool.
labeled the Transdimensional Express. So the implication is that they're using this train to travel across dimensions. So they have just returned from a dimension together, and we find out that they're traveling to all these Darkwing filled dimensions, and they're basically kidnapping every single Darkwing they can get their hands on. And then Magica is using a mind control spell. Put that in your back pocket, because did I already mention to you that mind control is a weird reoccurring theme that gets used over and over again in this series to a disturbing degree?
I will put that precisely in my pocket.
It makes me think of who's that guy that did Buffy? Josh.
Oh, Joss Whedon.
Yeah, and you know how like there's like this weird reoccurring theme where like several of the like Buffy and Angel characters are constantly getting like possessed or hypnotized and stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of that. It's just, I don't know. You'll see. So they are hypnotizing the Darkwing Ducks, and so they get off the train, and Magica's talking about how it was a close one. They're spending more and more time in whatever dimension Negaduck chooses for them. And then Negaduck's like, that was a cakewalk. You think I enjoy coming back to this dump of a reality? And then he turns on the, trying to be, I guess, the smooth, manipulative one, and he says, but let's not fight, gorgeous. It's becoming clearer. It's becoming clearer how brilliant our plan really is. And then, of course, Magica, this is the 1987, DuckTales Magica, so she's got, I'm sure, she's written as if she's got the accent. So she's like, we are making greatest heists these dimensions have ever seen. I think by now everybody who's listened to this podcast knows that I can't do voices or accents. But
They are so impressed right now. I can see all of them, and they are all nodding in agreement.
Well, you're all gonna have to live with it. So
Nothing but voices from here on out, baby.
It's a comic. We unfortunately cannot rely on the beautiful dulcet tones of Jim Cummings and the rest of the cast to carry us through this podcast. It's just me. Sorry, guys.
You're doing a service to the world. So is this the maggot? Did they draw her with the bags under her eyes?
Yes.
So she looks even more ragged. Okay.
Yes. She's very much just, she looks like she would have been in the cartoon, like basically that design. Mm-hmm. And Negaduck, I think he looks pretty well drawn. This comic, I will say the nice thing about the arc is that it gifted us with very much Negaduck imagery that was carried on to be used as icons in funny photoshopped images. So they start doing a lot of exposition, as this comic does have a tendency to do, and they're basically like talking about Negaduck says every destination offers the chance to steal something better than diamonds, jewels, and all that shiny stuff. With my dimensional hopping know-how, and then Magica's like, and my powerful mind control spell, and then Negaduck in smaller letters is like, oh yeah, of course. And then he continues, we're robbing these alternate realities of something that is or was completely unique. Darkwing Ducks. And then it cuts to the latest one that they've kidnapped and hogtied, and it's a two-headed Darkwing Duck.
I would just like to pitch an alternate plan to Negaduck and Magica. Why don't you just collect all of the Darkwing Ducks together and then dump them on a garbage planet and let them fight to the death? And then you can have all of those planets. There's no mind altering involved, because you know that a Darkwing in a room with another Darkwing is just going to fight that Darkwing to the death. It's like The One, starring Jet Li.
It's like putting a mirror in front of a bird, and the bird starts fighting its reflection.
See, it works on so many levels. But yeah, I guess they'll get back to me if they want to take up my plan next time. Continue.
Okay, so I want to just add as a little background tidbit. I recall seeing something about the original script for this, and I am 100% positive that it was originally written with Negaduck saying that he says every destination offers the chance to steal something better than diamonds, jewels, and all that crap. And I think it got removed. But
Disney said no.
Disney said
no craps because there's no toilets.
Even though there was one in the second.
They let one slide.
It's like PG-13. Megavolt can say crap once.
Can say crap once as a treat.
So then we get like a double page spread of their hideout, which appears to be in the subway. And there's a giant sign that says alternate Darkwings holding cell, just so I guess the readers can understand that the Darkwings are being held somewhere within the subway and they're all locked up. And then we get what is probably my only favorite interaction between Magica and Negaduck in this entire thing. And they're doing their like, okay, yeah. So Negaduck is going on about how Quackworks turned the city into a place that was crime-free, fun-free, and nothing else free. And it made him sick. And now he feels even more sick because everybody's like embracing Darkwing Duck and they're actually happy he's back. And Magica reveals why she's teamed up with Negaduck. She says, "In no time, this dimension's Darkwing Duck will be begging for destruction to end." What does that even mean? He. Anyways. And then she continues, "And with him, his big lummox sidekick will beg too, and will lead me to Scrooge McDuck's #1 dime. Glad I saved you from Quackworks tin soldiers, no?" And then we get the best, the one and only line that I will forever love. And it's Negaduck sarcastically saying, "Of course, I will rule St. Canard, and you can get your hands on 1 dime." With such similar... And then he says, because he's such a little sassy bitch, he says, "With such similar ambitions, I'm surprised we didn't team up sooner." Because it's true. Like, I don't understand Magica's reasoning here. She wants the dime, but she's like, I will get it through Launchpad, who is connected to Darkwing, and that's why she's involved. But it's like, why don't you just cut through all of that and go straight to the dime, or someone who's closer to the dime, because Launchpad isn't even in Duckburg.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the best plan.
Yeah, I think they needed a reason to justify why Magica and Negaduck would ever team up. And I think a lot of this was honestly just, you know, how there's a lot of, like, popular fan stuff that people would like to see, like a Darkwing Duck and DuckTales crossover. And, like, generally, if you were to say which 2 villains should team up, they would say Magica, Dispel, and Negaduck, because they're seen as the 2 probably most threatening or main antagonists of their series. So I think that's yeah, and I mean they don't make a terrible team. Like, he has the violence and, you know, the technical know-how, and she has the magic. So it is a pretty decent balance, I think. But I do like that he was being a snarky little bitch, because I do think he has no respect for anyone, especially Magica Dispel.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, like, she's just after that dime, man.
That's all she wants. Dime. She wants that dime. She really does.
She can't stop thinking about that D. The D, and by the D, I mean the dime. Oh, yeah, all right, so...
She's not taking his smack talk here, okay? She turns to him and she says, "I think you good ally, Negadalink. I don't think you good comedian." And she's got, like, a skull in her eye. Like, she's glaring at him, and there's a skull in her pupil.
Dun, dun, dun.
And then she says, "And where is Mr. Poe?" And then it says, "Somewhere else." And he's in the 2-headed universe, because everybody has 2 heads. And Poe's just flying around going, "Magica? Negaduck? Guys?" We never hear from him again. We never see him.
Why even draw that? Why even put that in? We had a whole page about a fisherman dying, and Poe is in the Blender universe with Tora's Blunderbulba. Oh man. Okay.
I guess they just wanted to explain why Poe was absent from the story.
Well, mission accomplished.
So we return to Darkwing, who is in the CEO office because, as we remember from the previous episode, Scrooge McDuck took over and made Launchpad the CEO of Quackworks. So Launchpad hangs out in this office, and he has like a little business suit with a tie, but he still wears his little pilot googles.
Is his tie really small?
No.
Aww.
That would actually be really funny.
Yeah.
I feel like this entire...
I'm gonna imagine it's really small, though.
We can Photoshop it later.
He's the world's smallest tie. Continue.
So, this, I think, was an attempt to once again push the comic into being like, it's not the show you remember, it's updated and it's new and it's for older audiences, because...
Is Launchpad doing lines of coke? Off the desk?
No, but...
Wolf of Wall Street?
No. Okay, no, but we're getting more exposition, and basically Darkwing is going on about how, so he's talking about how the city's getting back to the way it was, and because of that, all the villains are coming back. And he says old villains like Bugmaster, and then he says new villains like Blood Thinner.
I don't like the implications of that one.
And I was like, that seems like that doesn't really fit the Darkwing Duck universe unless it's like he's a giant mosquito or something.
Wow. Yeah, but like a giant mosquito, but he's also like a Richard Simmons kind of like fitness guru. And he thinks that everybody should be skinny.
Yeah, this is never expanded upon. They just threw that name out there, and I think it was just their way of saying like, ooh, Blood Thinner, that's like a more serious name than like the Bugmaster, right? At least
I know where Blood Thinner went.
Where?
He's with Poe.
And the Blender heads? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, Blender heads.
So we find out that I guess, I don't know who we is, but Launchpad says that we've spent so much time and energy reprogramming the crime bots. So the crime bots are now doing like gardening, and they're working as short order cooks and personal injury lawyers, and they have like a shot of one of the bots with like a little tie on. It's not a small tie though. I'm sorry, you won't get your small tie.
Damn it.
And then we cut to what's happening with Gosalyn, because when we left her in the last issue, she still had the Gizmo Duck suit. And she, once again, she still has it, but she's only allowed to use it in serious emergencies. And so there's a bunch of like cardboard cutouts of the Fearsome Four, and she's blindfolded and she's trying to shoot them with lasers, and she's missing them completely. And Darkwing is just like looking at the audience like he's in the office.
Is this in the house, or is this where is this happening?
This is like in the Quackworks office, like the CEO office.
Okay.
But then, ho ho ho.
Oh shoot.
So Darkwing is just like lumping around, worrying about stuff. And Launchpad's like, I need to show you something. So he talks.
And he whips out the world's smallest tie.
No. It's even better, though. So he talks about they were dismantling the Quackworks security cameras, and they picked up an incident, and it's Morgana Macabre. And it's video footage of her walking into a Starbucks. And Launchpad says this woman went into a Starducks, sneezed violently, and next thing you know, it looked like a Dungeons and Duck Lords tournament. And you can see that like all the people in the Starducks are like unicorns and minotaurs and stuff like that. But Morgana looks like she's having a very serious midlife crisis. Her hair is all scraggly and limp. It's not like up in her beehive. It's just like, I don't know. It looks like she, washed her hair, but then didn't dry it properly and slept on it, essentially. And
okay, so Morgana's not having a great time. So Launchpad said this woman?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. And I don't know if that was just their way of like opening up the dramatic narrative by starting out with not saying directly who she was, but like she's on the screen walking in this panel where he's saying this.
Launchpad, like a baby, has no object permanence and does not remember what people look like.
It's okay. I'm kind of the same way, so I can't blame him. So, okay, yeah, and then Launchpad says, at the same time, What?
Just real quick, if you ever forget what I look like, I'm the one wearing the tiny tie.
Okay. I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.
So he says, at the same time, I found a Quackworks security file that says a witch with a severe hairstyle had been brainwashed. I guess Taurus Bulba saw magic as a threat. So not only is Magica using mind control, but apparently Taurus Bulba was too, I guess.
Okay.
And it's not really explained how this is established, like what he did to brainwash people. We just know that I guess she's brainwashed.
Sure.
And I mean, when it shows her walking in, she looks like she's like all like half-lidded and like staring off like she's in a daze. So I don't know if she was hypnotized after this footage or hypnotized during this. I don't know. But anyways, it switches to Darkwing looking at her and he says, Morgana. And then it switches to a panel and it's like basically the shot from My Valentine Ghoul where they're in the cemetery having like a romantic dinner, and the little narrative thing at the top says, what happened? Dun, dun, dun. But it's Darkwing saying it. Yeah,
but it just like implies that so Darkwing couldn't fight crime, so he was just like, well, time to forget Morgana.
They'll tell you. They will give us an explanation, but we're getting there. But we have to.
Is it a good explanation?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, good. Great.
Okay, but before that, we cut to the Fearsome Four, who are in what I assume is the supervillain security prison, because they're in a prison for sure. There's some Beagle Boys in the background, and they're in a cafeteria, and they're eating their food, and Megavolt and Bushroot have collars on their necks, which I assume is controlling their powers.
Oh, okay. So you said collars, and immediately I thought cone of shame.
No. Just like, it's like a collar that looks like if you broke your neck, those things they put around it, and then it's got a padlock on it. And Quackerjack's not wearing one, and Liquidator isn't present in this shot, which I feel like it would have been funny if like he was in a glass or something at the table, but he's not.
Yeah.
I think I see there's a cutoff character in the background, and I think it's Peglay Pete, or it's implied to be, because it's like, when they try to do a cameo and they only show like part of their body.
You mean like 90% of the Duck Knight Returns, and then it turns out to not be that character? Yes.
So they're all just sitting around eating, and there's a TV on, and they're announcing something, and one of the random prisoners says, "Hey, it's Darkwing Duck," and Megavolt says, "Big whoop," and then the other guy continues, and he says, "And he's looking all weird or something." And then Megavolt looks at the screen and says, "Yikes, this is a big whoop." And then we get a shot of Spaceman Darkwing, and he's been hypnotized by Magica, and Magica and Negaduck's heads are like floating in the air. I guess to imply that, like, they're not actually how do I explain this visually? They're not actually like they're floating in the air, but it's like the way that the comic is depicting it is Magica is communicating with Negaduck to the Darkwing, and they're saying, "Remember, spaceman Darkwing, this is a strange alien planet full of hostile creatures who want to invade space station Canard. They must be neutralized." And then Negaduck says, "Tell them who you are." And then literally, and this really honestly is the most realistic part of this comic to me, because St. Canard citizens, I believe, are very stupid people in general. And so I actually believe this, but literally this version of Darkwing that is flying around in a flying saucer is saying, "Strange alien beings, remember the name Darkwing Duck, for I am the one you face." And everybody actually believes it's Darkwing Duck, even though he's flying around in a saucer and he's dressed as a space person. But I guess all they need to believe is that he said he's Darkwing Duck, so he must be.
Oh, call a spade a spade. They did, they were loving him though. So is he like blowing? Are they blowing things up or something? Like what is?
Yes, he's
Darkwing?
Well, okay. he's like rampaging through the city basically, and all the citizens are running and screaming. So the idea is they're basically mind controlling all these Darkwings, and they're unleashing them all at once, so that they can wreak havoc on the city and all claim their Darkwing. And I don't understand this because they're all seen together at once. So it's like, surely the people would be like, how can there be so many Darkwings at once? They can't all be him. But nobody questions it.
Spartacus all over again.
They don't question it. They just all apparently think Darkwing Duck is behind this. So we cut back to Darkwing, and he has found Morgana, and she's sitting in what looks like the weird tortured dentist chairs from the Taurus Bulba stuff. And she looks like she's got like 1,000-yard stare. And it just looks like she's horribly, like, I don't know, she's like in a fugue state and just isn't responsive. He's like trying to talk to her and she won't respond. She's just like staring off into space, and Darkwing is trying to reach out to her. So he's trying to jog her memory, and we see a bunch of different flashback scenes where he's
just like, "Hey, remember that time I pissed you off? Remember that other time I pissed you off? Remember when I said that really terrible thing to you and you turned me into a blobby, no-legged creature?"
If only. He says, "Come on, Morgana, all those memories we had have got to still be there." And then he talks about the good times, and it does a little overlay, and it shows him with like a bouquet and candy, and he's giving it to her, and she's looking very happy. And then he says the bad times, and it's like a few seconds afterwards, and she accidentally turned the gifts into monstrous creatures because she meant to teleport them. And then he continues, and I guess the weird times. And then we see the Thunderquack has become sentient, and it's doing like a Little Shop of Horrors type gag where he's going, "Feed me, Launchpad, feed me." And Morgana and Darkwing are just standing in the background looking horrified. And then, so he says, he says, "Any of this ringing a bell, Honey Bunch?" And he reaches out and he touches her hand, and she stands up and screams in horror and then shoots lasers out of her eyes.
Okay.
And zaps him and turns him into a giant finger. Like he's a hand with a finger.
Just one finger?
Well, like, okay, so it's a giant hand, and Darkwing is the pointer finger on the hand.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just
seems legit.
Yeah, why not? So obviously, so the message here is he's not really getting through to her. So we see kind of an overlay of a bunch of different things happening. Launchpad's eating a sub and watching the news, and it looks like a caveman Darkwing is attacking the museum. And once again, nobody is like questioning this. They're just like, oh, they're all running in terror, and they're like, it's Darkwing on an actual dinosaur, because he's riding a T-Rex.
Of course he is.
And then we see Magica and Negaduck laughing and looking into the crystal ball, and she's saying, now this is how all those morons are going to remember their precious hero. And then Negaduck says, soon the entire city will wish he never came back.
I don't really think that Negaduck would be super stoked to watch other people wreak havoc. I feel like he would want to be in on it.
He does reveal a little bit of his plan later. We'll get there, though, soon enough. So now Darkwing's reaching out to Morgana again, and he's found Eek, Squeak, and Archie. And they fly in, and he says, hey, look, I found Eek, Squeak, and Archie. They were in the Quackworks vaults. And for some reason, they look at Morgana, and then they viciously attack Darkwing.
Oh, okay.
And then Archie uses his webs to tie Darkwing up, and Morgana's still just staring off into space. Like, have you ever seen that gif of, like, that dog with the 1,000-yard stare, and it's, like, hovering over a birthday cake? And then it's... do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. We are all that dog staring over the birthday cake right now, Morgana. We're here with you.
That's what it reminds me of. So, okay. So, we finally move back to Goslin, and she's in a school called st.canard School for Spirited Youngsters. And...
which is a different school from the last one?
I think it's the same. I think it's the same school because she's wearing the same outfit. And she's just going through her day-to-day, and she's very bored. She thinks everything can be solved with lasers. And then she overhears, I guess, one of the classmates is on his cell phone, and he says, hey, there's a car chase happening downtown with some old Darkwing Duck villain. Which I think is kind of weird to say, because in universe, why would they refer to a villain as a Darkwing Duck villain?
Well, I guess there's the Gizmo Duck villain and Rubber Chicken villains. And...
well, it's Ammonia Pine, so...
oh, okay.
So, the police are chasing after Ammonia Pine. It looks like she's stolen the Quackworks cleaning supplies surplus, and she's threatening to use the supplies to build an A-bomb, an air freshener bomb.
Okay, there we go.
You thought it was just gonna end at A-bomb?
I mean, I don't know. This comic series so far has made very bold choices.
And then we're introduced to a fan favorite, alternate Darkwing. Do you know which one it is? Can you guess?
It is Tiny Tie Darkwing.
No.
Quiverwing Duck.
Yes.
Ta-da!
And he has been hypnotized, and basically he shoots flaming arrows at the police and blows up their cars, and Ammonia gets away, and immediately the police are like, Darkwing Duck is going to pay, because again, nobody's like putting two and two together, even though there's several Darkwings rampaging through the city.
Infinite even.
So now we get the flashback. We're back to Darkwing, and he says, maybe the bats are right. This could be my fault. And I don't know if that means he can talk to Eek and Squeak now, or if he just assumed that based on them viciously attacking him. But
maybe they're right. Maybe I am too delicious.
But we get a flashback for what happened between him and Morgana that led to this point. So
was it him coming in second at the superhero contest?
No, but the little thing says, before it all changed, ... And we see Darkwing Duck is in Morgana's mansion, and she says, Dark, you're leaving me? And he says, I'm leaving everything. No more Darkwing Duck. Things happened. Things that hit close to home. So we can assume this happened probably directly after Negaduck attacked the Mallard household. Mm-hmm. So he's saying, the Quackworks crime bots seem to be an upgrade, so who needs Darkwing Duck anyways? And Morgana's like, I know you don't believe that for 1 second. Show me a robot that can teach a sorceress on the wrong side of the law that there's a better way. Show me the robot that can take on the very worst the city has to offer with style and grace. And then she gazes off into the window, and she says, those metal thugs might be able to take on your average mugger or purse snatcher, but they'll never be able to stand up against a real villain like Negaduck. And you see Darkwing, like, looks like he just got punched in the heart, because she doesn't know that Negaduck, I guess, attacked the Mallard household. So I guess he feels like she kind of accidentally rubbed it in, because he literally just attacked them, and now she's like, you nobody can handle Negaduck like you can. Mm-hmm. And then she's looking out the window and she says, this city needs you, Dark. I need you. And then she turns around and he's gone.
Of course he is.
So he just left without saying anything, and she never heard from him again.
Nice.
The end.
Gentlemen, that's how you do it. The coward's way.
So we flash back to Darkwing's holding Morgana's hand, and she looks like she's comatose, honestly.
Also, it's like pretty bold for him to that's how it ended. To him be like, "Oh, honey pie, why don't you wake up real quick?"
Well, he says, Morgana, I'm sorry I left you. I thought becoming just another anonymous citizen would keep everyone I cared about safe, but all I really did was ensure myself a lifetime's worth of regrets. If I stayed, Darkwing, if I stayed with you, then maybe none of this would have happened. And then we get one of those moments where he sheds a tear and it drops on her bill. But what kind of I thought was funny is that in the previous panel, he's holding her hand and he's significantly shorter than her. So
I was about to say, what kind of position are they in that he could cry on her mouth?
So in the panel, he's holding her hand, and she is, even when sitting, her head is elevated above his, but then he cries, and it shows, like, the tear plips onto her bill.
He's just flinging his tears at her.
So I like to imagine he stood up on his tiptoes and then, like, cried on her face.
He just pulled a chair over and stood on it.
And then she, through the magic of, Disney, when like a tear falls upon someone, it snaps them out of their trauma. And she's like, Dark. And all of a sudden her hair gets all spindly and like magically like forms itself back into a beehive. And then they share a little bill nuzzle, and they both say good to have you back at the same time. And then they cuddle each other.
That was very quick.
I mean, we did get, like, a whole series of panels of him trying to reach out to her, so, like, they had to move it on eventually, but it was kind of funny how it was, like, he just had to cry on her face. That's how you wake up a woman.
Take notes.
So, Launchpad and Goslin walk in, and Launchpad's like, sorry to break up the moment, but this is something you gotta see. And then we see this, character who looks like Commissioner Gordon, but as a...
Does Launchpad walk in and be like, oh, some woman's in here with you, DW?
He seems to know it's Morgana.
Oh, okay.
And we get Commissioner Gordon, the Duckverse edition, and he's doing an announcement, and he says, after careful review of all the recent cases of extreme aggravation against both the citizens and law enforcement officers of St. Canard, we are prepared to name the suspect in this case. In fact, the culprit in question, a so-called hero, has been quite helpful in naming himself, loud and clear. That is why I, as St. Canard Chief of Police, am declaring Darkwing Duck public enemy number 1. And that's the end.
Negaduck would be losing his mind right now. Like, what? Anyway, we'll get there.
But again, I can't believe, like, this is your police people? Like, you're like, it's clearly Darkwing Duck, even though there's been,
he's
like...
everywhere!
He's everywhere at once. To be fair, even the cartoon, stretched its logic sometimes, just for the sake of the storyline. So I guess they can get away with that, but I feel like the reason they could do that in the cartoon was because they only had 22 minutes to work in a storyline. So they have to move things along quickly and you have to suspend your disbelief. Whereas in a comic, you could probably get away with a little more continuity and making sense of things, but that's not
I
going to
think the
happen.
biggest stretch so far is that he was well received to begin with.
Yes, actually, I agree with you, because like usually the whole joke is that like nobody remembers him or appreciates him, and like he's literally just back to doing what he was doing before, and suddenly people care.
He gets no respect.
So now we move on to the next issue. Well, friends, it's that time again for me to tell you that we're ending this episode here because we got a little too ambitious. As you can see, we're only through the first issue of this arc, and it's an entire episode in and of itself. And trust me, it doesn't get any shorter from here. The full recording for Crisis on Infinite Darkwings was almost 3 hours long. Don't fret though, because we'll be back next week to discuss issue 2, where Kitty continues to be thoroughly disappointed by a severe lack of miniature ties. But until then, crime doesn't sleep, and neither do we. Bye everyone!